Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Delicious things to eat.
As anyone in my life would tell you, I watch too many movies. I am behind on so many television shows because I love movies. I'm not sure if I should be admitting this, but I believe I watched around 225 movies last year. I love watching movies at home, I love going to the movie theater with my friends, and I literally get so excited for the drive-in each summer. So instead of only resorting to Letterboxd for my reviews, I will also be doing a monthly summary and ranking of my movies, because no one else has ever done that before. This is going to be a super casual video where I briefly talk about what I liked or disliked, or else we will be here for hours. This month, I watched 17 movies. This does not include the 4 documentaries I watched. For time's sake, I will be skipping those in detail, but I watched Streetwise from 1984, Tiny, The Life of Aaron Blackwell from 2016, a sequel to Streetwise, Marty, Life is Short from 2026, and Leaving Neverland from 2019. I recommend all of them. Marty made me sob, though Streetwise is personally one of my favorite documentaries. It follows youth on the street of 1980 Seattle, taking a very authentic and humanistic approach. I highly, highly, highly recommend you check it out. I will also not be including rewatches, but fortunately, I only have 2. Crazy Stupid Love from 2011, a fantastic comedy that you can watch for the finale alone, and The Devil Wears Prada from 2006. This is a favorite from childhood, and of course, I had to watch it in preparation for the sequel. Aside from the concerning beliefs of the time regarding body image, I think it really holds up. I love Andy, I love Nigel, I love Miranda, I love the soundtrack, I love the fashion. I hate Nate. Now onto the new movies, going from worst to best. Ultimately, these are my opinions, though feel free to share yours in the comments. Yeah, I can't say it was the worst month when a movie with Harrison Ford is my least favorite. This also ended up being the month of Kelly McGillis, as you will see later. I was really disappointed about this one. I had grown up hearing so many stories of how this scared my older relatives when they were kids. I'm gonna try to avoid spoilers in this video, but for this one, I fear I can't avoid them while discussing the premise. Essentially, a young Amish boy witnesses a murder while in the bathroom stall of a train station. Harrison Ford, a detective for the Philadelphia Police Department, must discover the culprit, which eventually leads to him hiding amongst the Amish community. I think from the opening few scenes alone, as well as this film's reputation, I thought it would be more crime thriller with hints of romance between Book and Amish widow Rachel. Instead, about half of this film is just a whimsical romance drama while John tries to adapt to rural life. Honestly, you could forget that a murder took place at all, and I wouldn't blame you. By the end of it all, I just wasn't invested enough in the climax, and I couldn't even tell you the motivations for most of the antagonists. To make matters worse, the ending, at least for me, really doesn't pay off and leaves you feeling rather empty. I would still say check it out if the premise intrigues you, as I know this really works for some audience members. Listen, I will always like a film better if it's at least a little gay. If you saw my last video, you know how I feel about the lack of representation for queer media. So I was super down to watch a pair of lesbians saving the world. Unfortunately, the rest of the movie is pretty generic. Without getting too much into it, a group of friends find a mysterious historical object, use it despite the fact that everyone should be suspicious. They start getting haunted, die gruesome deaths, you know the rest. Yeah, this is a pretty standard teen horror film. I still enjoyed myself, however, and relished in the autumnal atmosphere. The deaths were fairly creative, and I was really intrigued by the concept of speeding up the death you were meant to receive later in life. Ultimately, however, the climax once again fell flat to me and seemed a little too reminiscent of the Fear Street trilogy. This is a film that I think is best enjoyed with a large group of friends in the theater, and while they're often pretty standard, these types of films will always make me feel a little nostalgic. I watched this after completing Marty Short's documentary because I needed to see Catherine O'Hara again. This is my second Christopher Guest-directed film following Waiting for Guffman, which I adored. This, however, was a bit of a letdown for me. I went in really hopeful as I am a huge sucker for late 60s, early 70s pop culture and Americana folk. And while I appreciated what they did with the material, I never found any of it that funny. Perhaps this diminishes the effort of the film too much, but I don't know how else to put it. Too much stock and not enough mock. Also, Christopher Guest was certainly not in it as much as Guffman, and I think that only debilitated it more. The music was certainly spot on for the time, and I'm still eager to check out Guest's other work. This one just rang a bit flat for me. For as long as I can remember, I have loved Star Wars. I grew up on Star Wars. So I was very excited after 7 long years to have a Star Wars film in theaters. I have a similar gripe to Marvel where I struggle to keep up with the Star Wars TV shows. I will someday get to Andor Season 2. I had previously seen the first 2 seasons of Mandalorian and enjoyed it well enough, though mostly for my favorite little green creature, Grogu, aka Baby Yoda. I wasn't going in with the highest expectations due to poor reviews and the show not being my favorite, but I had fun. It definitely feels like an elongated television special, but it was nice to see those characters again. I particularly enjoyed the first half where we get to see Mando and Grogu explore the moon of Shikari and take place in epic gladiator battles. Rada the Hutt was also a welcome addition. By the halfway mark, however, it really slowed down. I still enjoyed the fight with the dragon snake, as well as getting to see Grogu take care of Mando, displaying his growth and their loving bond really well, but there is no need for this movie to be over 2 hours. Also, as Disney will never kill Mando and Grogu, the stakes never felt that high, especially as the story doesn't really connect to the larger Star Wars universe or story. A fun time, if not leaving me wanting a little bit more. And a lightsaber duel. Having never heard of this COVID-era horror film before, I was recommended it by my favorite movie podcast, House of Cinema, and I immediately checked it out. It was a quick watch at only 50 minutes, and I can't say I ever really tire of the films that take place solely on a computer or a phone, especially as this film connects to the pandemic in a very interesting way. The plot is your standard demon fare, and I can't say the characters are the most likable, but I was really impressed by the visual and practical effects utilized, particularly in the climax. The latter half of the film really held my attention, though I can't say they really stuck the landing in the final minutes. However, I would still recommend it. It's quick, it's spooky, and it'll keep you off Zoom for at least a week. I promise I didn't plan this, but Milk and Cereal also happens to be a found footage film. Directed by Curry Barker, I decided to watch this as his feature film debut, Obsession, had recently been released into theaters with rave reviews. Don't worry, we will get to it later. Barker has already made a name for himself with a handful of short award-winning horror films. Milk and Cereal is his longest, running at an hour. It's also completely free on YouTube alongside his other short films, so it is super accessible. I really think it's best to go into this film blind, but essentially it follows a YouTube prank channel if things went very poorly. So essentially a typical day in the life of Logan Paul. As someone who was in college during the golden era of pranking channels in the mid to late 2010s, I really enjoyed this dark comedy. Barker leads as troubled lead Milk, and while I know he's focusing on writing and directing, I found his performance to be impressively unsettling. I hope we see more performances someday in his future. This was also only filmed with $800, which if you watch the film, you will understand is insane. If you're a fan of horror, particularly found footage film, I recommend. And then immediately run and buy a ticket for Obsession. So this is possibly an unpopular opinion incoming. Shockingly, as someone who had a major 80s phase in middle school and grew up with Gen X parents, I never saw Top Gun. So when I saw it was returning to theaters, I took the opportunity. And it was very entertaining. Very 80s, very melodramatic, very fun. I may have my thoughts on Tom Cruise with certain things, but I can't deny that he is a movie star. He really holds your attention from start to finish, and I understand why so many people found him charming. I loved the banter between the pilots, particularly Anthony Edwards as Goose, though perhaps I am biased because that is the nickname my parents gave me. Val Kilmer as Iceman is also, of course, fantastic, though I wish he was in it more. I definitely see what people mean by this film having a gay aura, particularly between Iceman and Maverick, though the middling relationship between Maverick and Charlotte, played by Kelly McGillis, certainly hinder that. Nevertheless, Iceman is in an entirely separate queer film of his own, and I have to admire that. The score is super memorable, though how much can they play Danger Zone? And no one has shot sunsets better. I wish I found the flying scenes a bit more compelling, and like I hinted at, I think there is too much emphasis placed on the romance, which I believe hurts both Maverick and Charlotte as individual characters. Even if I was let down a little, I'm still glad I saw it, and I am really excited to check out Top Gun Maverick. The Coen brothers are definitely directors and writers that I want to spend more time on. I saw Oh Brother, Where Art Thou when I was a child, as well as Fargo, Raising Arizona, True Grit, and Hail Caesar. Raising Arizona is the only one of those films I watched within the last 10 years, so I was happy to check this more underrated Coen brothers film out. And I was really pleasantly surprised. I'm not even sure how to put into words why this film worked for me. It certainly wasn't a hit at the time, nor do many people know about this film today. I watched this with my family, and only 2 of us came out of it really enjoying this movie as a whole. So what did I appreciate about this film? Honestly, it made me feel really nostalgic for a certain type of film. It was whimsical, it was unique, it took a lot of big chances with such a zany premise. Well, that certainly still happens today, as you will see in another film I saw this month. It often feels quite rare. It's a film that keeps you guessing, laughing, and eventually walking away with a big old grin on your face. The score from Carter Burrell was immediately added to my movie playlist on Spotify and really added to the overall atmosphere. Seeing Paul Newman play a cartoonish villain was a delight, and a film with Charles During will always be improved tenfold by his performance. But who really makes this movie what it is Tim Robbins and Jennifer Jason Leigh. Their chemistry is very well established. I love the banter in this film, and I could only feel very bisexual things for the 2 of them. I don't want to say any more because honestly this is the type of film to enter in blind, as you will hear me say many times in this video, but I can guarantee this is a film for adults, friends, families, or, for kids. Would anyone be surprised if I said I saw this World War II drama with my dad? No, probably not. But to be completely transparent, I've always held a certain fascination for war dramas. I would argue that films set around war are one of the more contentious films you can make. They deal with gruesome casualties, battle shots that can make or break a movie, and is it even possible to make an anti-war film? I would say yes, though I would argue there are far fewer of them than you might assume. Because no matter how hard you try, it's hard not to make certain elements of war, particularly the brotherhood that war films love to highlight, enticing to certain audience members. That's not even getting into outright harmful propagandist films such as Gods and Generals. There is a fantastic video about this from Bowie Deschanel, which I will link down below. All that to say, I go into war films with a critical eye. Fortunately, I really enjoyed Pressure. This deals with D-Day, like so many World War II films before it, but instead focuses on the meteorological element. It's certainly an ensemble piece, but I would say the lead is Dr. Stagg, played by the incomparable Andrew Scott, who must work with a British and US team of meteorologists who must decide if June 5th works for D-Day. If you know history, you might be able to see where this is going. A lot of war movies focus on the soldiers, as they should, so it's easy to forget the decision makers behind the scenes. There's, of course, people like General Eisenhower who feel guilt-ridden over past mistakes, but weather also has to be taken into consideration, particularly when dealing with water like on the beaches of Normandy. Waves that are a foot too tall can be catastrophic. I was super intrigued. If you're looking for intense battle scenes, this is definitely not the film for you, but it carries tension throughout, and I really appreciated the way they focused on the soldiers, particularly close-ups, to better humanize the situation. I also had no idea about Exercise Tiger, a failed training exercise where, due to miscommunication, Allied troops started killing each other, ending with 749 casualties. As a whole, I actually learned a lot from this film, and I highly recommend. I wasn't sure what to think when I heard they were making a sequel after 20 years. I don't have much faith in sequels or reboots as a whole, especially with how many are made these days and how most of them are cash grabs. And I wasn't blown away by any of the trailers or promotional material. But then, as soon as the movie came out, I started hearing a lot of good buzz, and I'm here to say, I concur. This is how you make a legacy sequel. The characters have not only grown and developed, but the world around them has changed. Andy, a journalist, now has to deal with the rise of AI and the gradual extinction of her field. Miranda, different in many ways to Andy, is not only aging out of fashion, at least according to her superiors, but Runway magazine is a thing of the past. Everything is digital, everything is fast fashion, everything is influencers. I really appreciate the care this team took to tell a worthwhile story and respect the original characters that they created. And, slight spoilers, having Nigel finally get seen by Miranda was incredibly heartwarming. Miranda as a whole has slightly softened with age, becoming more reflective without losing her edge, and I really liked that angle. There's another fabulous soundtrack to accompany the story, and the film was very careful to balance new material with the occasional nostalgic nod. I can't say I thought Andy's boyfriend was all that interesting or necessary to the plot, but if that's my largest complaint, they're doing something right. Finding this film felt like a fever dream. Honestly, I have no idea how I hadn't come across it up until this point. As a queer individual myself, I am always looking for new films that represent my community. It's particularly interesting to find films in the 20th century, such as But I'm a Cheerleader and The Watermelon Woman, as not only is it interesting to hear different perspectives from different times, but I love finding hidden gems from an era where it was much more taboo and difficult to speak on these issues. So imagine my shock when I find there is a film about a group of gay men from the early 2000s featuring Zach Braff, Timothy Olyphant, Dean Cain, Billy Porter, Justin Theroux, Andrew Keegan, Jennifer Coolidge, Neil Long, and Frasier icon himself, John Mahoney. I don't think I've ever gasped so loud as I did when bleach blonde 20-something Zach Braff first walked on screen. I honestly couldn't believe they got so many big names, or soon-to-be big names, at a time when gay marriage wasn't even legalized in the US. There's not much plot here, it's more of a character study from this friend group, most of them still grappling with their queer identities in some way. Most of them work at the same restaurant, live together, play baseball on the weekends, and rant over drinks about their latest dating attempts. It all felt very human, and I adored the inclusion of gay culture and slang from queer director Greg Berlanti. It's just so wonderful to see a film that, while delving into difficult subjects, allows gay people to be happy. There's no tragedy, there's no inclusion of AIDS, there's no death. While there are many such important stories, sometimes we should just be allowed to live. I certainly wish it were longer, clocking in at only 96 minutes, but I'm not sure I have any other complaints. I mean, you get to see John Mahoney, who does drag on the side, in a loving relationship with a pianist who only wears purple. What more can you ask for? And here we have another massive surprise. When I saw the trailer for the Shepherd Hugh Jackman gets murdered and his sheep have to solve the mystery movie, I was not sold. Not even a little bit. I laughed and moved on. And then the movie came out and I was seeing an endless number of TikToks where people were not only praising the movie, but talking about how much they sobbed throughout it. The movie about the sheep who solves mysteries? It couldn't be. And yet it was. I went to see this with my entire family, and all of us 6 of us walked away with nothing but praise for the sheep detectives. Who would have thought? Well, this is certainly a family film, and how wonderful to have a family film that doesn't talk down to their children and is not only funny, but thoughtful and layered. There is something here for everyone. There is an absolutely stacked voice cast, as well as a group of fantastic live actors. It has biting sense of humor, it is an incredibly unique premise, and it deals with the complicated topics of grief and memory in such stirring and nuanced ways. Unsurprisingly, I cried multiple times. With so many colorful characters, it is really rewatchable, and I can definitely see myself going back to this film when I need a pick-me-up. I would say the standouts are certainly Julia Louis-Dreyfus leading the charge as Lily, Nicholas Galitzine, and Bryan Cranston. Nicholas Braun is also a delight, though I'm sorry, I simply cannot be convinced he is from England. That is a Midwestern boy right there. Lastly, I would die for the Winter Lamb. That is all. I have no idea what to say about this film, and I mean that in the most complimentary way. This is my first Boots Riley film, shocking considering Lakeith Stanfield is one of my favorite actors, but I'm already starting to pick up on the fact that his films are very hard to summarize or describe. Truly, I have never seen anything like this before, and that is something we desperately need in Hollywood right now. Originality. It follows a young Corvette played iconically by Keke Palmer and a group of friends who work as boosters, people who steal clothes from stores, often high fashion, and resell them for a better price. This film has so much to say, focusing on such important topics as overconsumption, capitalism, class solidarity, individuality, the issue of white people stealing the ideas of black people and selling them as their own, and civil disobedience. And that's not even the tip of the iceberg. I know I keep saying this, but perhaps it applies to this film more than anything. It's best to go in blind. Palmer is the star, but there are stunning performances from Naomi Ackie, Taylor Page, Poppy Liu, Demi Moore, Don Cheadle, Will Poulter, and yes, Lakeith Stanfield. There are some absolutely insane practical effects. There's a scene with some unusual humans, I don't want to spoil, where Riley uses a mix of practical prosthetic effects, heavy makeup, and stop motion animation. Costuming has to win the Oscar, and we finally have a film that knows how to use color. While this film can handle difficult subjects, it is ultimately very motivating and feel-good. This is another film that improves if you see it with an audience. It's not getting as much marketing as other films right now, so please check it out if you can. Horror is back and better than ever. Not only is this Curry Barker's feature film debut at only 26, but with a budget of $750,000, it has currently made $108.8 million in only 3 weeks. It eventually made history by scoring the biggest second weekend spike in modern box office history outside of the Christmas holidays, as it achieved an unprecedented 39.4% jump in its sophomore weekend, eventually surpassing Mando and Grogu, a Star Wars film. This kind of growth hasn't been seen since Jaws in 1975. Let that sink in. Obsession tells the story of Bear, played by Michael Johnston, who has a crush on his friend Nikki, played by Inda Navarrete. When he becomes too scared to share these feelings, he decides to make a wish on a novelty item called One Wish Willow, not knowing the horrors that are about to follow. With hardly any of those typical horror jump scares, this film relies on the classic techniques of slow-building tension, eerie silences, and unsettling lighting. Though while Barker's direction and writing clearly shine through, the real star of the show is Navarrete, who carries this film on her back. Without her unforgettable and heartbreaking portrayal of a girl trapped in her own body, this film wouldn't work. She has truly mastered her craft and utilizes her face and body in a way that really helps the audience to see the horrible division between the possessed entity and real Nikki. The moments where you see Nikki break through and Bear, unsurprisingly, being unwilling to save her are the most gut-wrenching. I'm really trying to avoid spoilers, but if I can leave you with anything, it's that you should see this in theaters. I have no doubt this movie will hold up through the years, but it is meant to be seen amongst a full crowd. The tension builds to a deliciously terrifying climax and an ending that'll have you walking away with the echoes of Nikki's screams. I'll be thinking about this one for a while. While this film, directed by Nobuhiko Obayashi and released in Japan, has been on my radar for a while, I've always found an excuse not to watch it. Namely, my brother liked it and told me to watch it, and I was being stubborn. Because if my brother likes it, I likely won't, despite the fact that we have a lot of common interests within the world of film. At long last, however, I was forced to watch this a few Saturdays ago. My family and I have a tradition of getting together on Saturdays when we are able and watching a movie together. Each week, someone gets the opportunity to pick a movie. That week, my brother picked House. I was intrigued, if not slightly hesitant. And as much as it pains me to say, and hopefully my brother isn't watching it, I was completely and totally blown away. If you've seen this film, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's bizarre. It's strange. It is abstract. It's really hard to explain. But essentially, it tells the story of a schoolgirl traveling with her 6 friends to her ailing aunt's country home after being unable to come to terms with her dad's new fiancé, where they come face to face with supernatural events. Supernatural events is putting it lightly. From there, for 88 minutes, havoc rains down on these 6 girls, where they are forced to come to terms with their own fears as they attempt to escape this strange and unsettling world. If I provide any more details, you are going to ask that I be institutionalized. I'm not even sure who I should recommend this to, as I have truly never seen a film like this. I can certainly warn you that there are elements of body horror and abstract graphic imagery, so if you're not interested in that, you may want to skip this film. But otherwise, I would give it a watch. I guarantee that you will never be able to predict what is going to happen, and at the very least, it'll lead to some very interesting discussions and analysis. I've seen a lot of very unique perspectives regarding this film, but knowing that Obayashi based it off his childhood experiences has really enhanced my view of House. More specifically, he was a Hiroshima native and childhood survivor of the 1945 atomic bombing, and as a result, he lost many friends to the blast. Throughout this film, you see someone grappling with the strong division between generations, particularly as it pertains to their view on war, trauma, grief, the strong ties of love, and the fading of childhood. Sure, it's super weird, but equally as poignant and beautiful, making it an easy choice for my favorite film of May 2026. Of course, there are a couple films released this month that I missed and would love to catch up on at some point. This includes Hokum, Backrooms, Is God Is, and Tuner. As far as next month, I am most looking forward to Disclosure Day by Steven Spielberg, as well as Power Ballad, The Death of Robin Hood, Girls Like Girls, Leviticus, Supergirl, and tentatively Toy Story 5. That's all for now, but I would love to hear what you watched as well as your thoughts on my listing. Bye!